Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's Last Post ceremony. My name is Melanie Cassar, and joining us today from the Royal Australian Navy is Commander Greg Swindon. 80 years ago, on the 19th of February 1942, Japanese aircraft attacked Darwin. The outbreak of war in the Pacific had seen the rapid expansion of military presence in Darwin. Darwin was used as a base from which to deploy forces for the defence of the Dutch East Indies. The Japanese attack responded to this presence, marking an attempt to prevent Allied forces from contesting the impending invasion of Timor and Java. The raiders began to arrive just before 10 a.m. Air raid sirens were sounded as Japanese bombers conducted attacks on the ships in the Darwin harbour, most of which were anchored near each other, making them an easy target for air attack. These attacks lasted for 30 minutes, resulting in the sinking of 3 warships and 6 merchant vessels, and damage to another 10 ships. The second wave of the attack arrived just before midday. 2 formations of Japanese aircraft arrived over RAF Base Darwin and dropped their bombs before turning for a second attack. Over 260 Japanese aircraft were involved in the raids. Of the Allied aircraft, 6 Hudson light bombers were destroyed, and another Hudson and a Wirraway were badly damaged. 2 American P-40s and a B-24 Liberator bomber were also destroyed. With Singapore having fallen only days earlier, Darwin's population panicked and began to stream southward, heading for Adelaide River and the train south. The raid claimed about 250 to 300 casualties. Between 300 and 400 people were wounded. It was not to be the last attack on Australian soil. Attacks on Darwin continued during March and April. The Northern Territory and parts of Western Australia were later bombed. In May 1942, the war came to the east coast, with 3 Japanese midget submarines entering Sydney Harbour. In June 1942, a submarine shelled the eastern suburbs of Sydney and Newcastle. Today we commemorate the 80th anniversary of the bombing of Darwin. We are honoured to welcome Mr. John King, President of the Returned and Services League of Australia, ACT branch, and Group Captain Ernie Walsh, Acting President, Air Force Association, ACT, and the delegation representing the Frank McDonald Prize Tour. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. We acknowledge the members of RSL and Services Club Association, RSL Victoria, and RSL Queensland, who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection by visitors to the memorial. Australia's Federation Guard is the tri-service ceremonial unit of the Australian Defence Force. They provide a ceremonial presence at civil and military events and during visits to Australia by foreign dignitaries. The Guard will now dismount the catafalque party from the tomb of the unknown Australian soldier. If you are able, please stand and join in singing the national anthem.
Catafalque Party, attention! Catafalque Party, present arms.
Australians, all let us rejoice, for we are one and free. With golden soil and wealth for toil, our home is good by sea. Our land abounds in nature's gifts of beauty, rich and rare. In history's page, let every stage advance Australia fair. In joyful strains, then let us sing, advance Australia fair.
Catafalque Party, shoulder, arms. Catafalque Party, order, arms.
If able, please be seated. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where family and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the pool of reflection.
Today we remember and pay tribute to leading aircraftman Leonard Arthur Barton. Leonard Barton was born on the 13th of November 1910 in Rainbow, Victoria, the eldest son of Arthur and Sophia Barton. He grew up in Rainbow, a small town in northwest Victoria, about 400 kilometres from Melbourne. He worked as a motor mechanic and a fitter. With a decade of experience, he went on to run his own garage. On the 9th of October 1932, Barton married Marjorie Stewart, and in the following years, a daughter, Betty, and a son, Robert, were born to the couple. Barton's father died in 1939, and the following year, another son was added to the family, Dennis, who was born on the 14th of June 1940. On the 30th of August 1940, Leonard Barton enlisted in the Royal Australian Air Force as a fitter. After attending a recruit course in March 1941, he had a brief posting to a stores depot in Port Melbourne. His next posting, however, would be further from home. After making his way overland to the Northern Territory, leading aircraftman Leonard Arthur Barton was posted to RAF Station headquarters in Darwin. On the 19th of February 1942, Japanese fighters and bombers attacked Darwin. The first wave of the raid began just before 10 a.m. Heavy bombers struck harbour installations in the town, while dive bombers, escorted by Zero fighters, attacked shipping in the harbour, military and civil aerodromes, and the hospital at Berrima. Just before midday, the second wave arrived, with high-altitude bombing of the Royal Australian Air Force Base. The largest single attack mounted by a foreign power on Australia, the raids damaged ships, aircraft and buildings, killing at least 243 people and wounding between 300 and 400. Amongst the dead was leading aircraftman Leonard Arthur Barton. He was just 31 years old. Today, his remains lie in the Adelaide River Cemetery alongside 435 Commonwealth burials of the Second World War. His name is listed on the Roll of Honour on my left, amongst almost 40,000 Australians who died while serving in the Second World War. His photograph is displayed today beside the pool of reflection. This is but one of many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember leading aircraftman Leonard Arthur Barton, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the ode and the sounding of the last post.
Catapult party, shoulder, arms.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will
Catapult party,
remember them.
present, arms. party, shoulder, arms.
Lest we forget.
Lest we forget.
Catapult party in woods. Turn. Catapult party, quick, march.
We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Poziere or in the low scrub at Gallipoli with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes the last post ceremony. On behalf of the Director and staff, thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial today and for your continued support of the Memorial's development project. We appreciate your visit despite the challenges posed by COVID and wish you all a very pleasant evening. Thank you.